begin the hearing, the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, I don't see the recording alert, but that's good. All right, we're going to call to order the Planning Commission meeting, the City of Sherwood, for April 27th, 2021. We'll do roll call. Chair Simpson's here. Vice Chair Kai.
Here.
Commissioner Widola.
Present.
Commissioner Bance.
Here.
Commissioner Harsh.
Here.
Commissioner Giles. And Commissioner Brown. Not here. All right. On our consent agenda this evening, we have 5 sets of minutes: the December 8th, January 26th, February 23rd, March 23rd, and April 13th. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Chair Simpson.
Yes.
One point of clarification first is multiple times throughout the agenda, the text of there, my name is misspelled. And so if that could be corrected, that'd be nice. If not, it's not a big deal.
We will fix that.
All right.
Yeah, I have on the December 8 one as well. It starts off the beginning with council members absent, and I think that should be planning commissioners absent. I don't know if that's important enough to have to redact and bring it back, or revise and bring back next time.
I think on the December 8th, Tim Rosner was our council liaison for the evening, and they were, he was absent. Is that? I think it is council, because he was our, he was our liaison for the evening, and he was absent.
Right.
I think we're. Okay.
So I tap him to replace me and he no-shows? I'm going to have to speak to Mr. Rosen about that.
No. Have to take back your pay from him. All right. I've heard...
For the record, it's 0, just so everyone knows.
Yes, absolutely. We're all volunteers. So for this evening, I heard a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda with the corrections.
I'm sorry, and maybe Erica already got this. Who was the mover? Because I heard a couple people who motioned to.
I did an initial motion, Julia.
Okay, thanks. I just know Colleen does the minutes from the video, and I didn't get it. And if I didn't get it, she probably wouldn't get it either. But so, thank you.
All right. I think we should have the commissioners, if they can, turn on their camera so we can at least see when they're talking. That's all, only if it works. All right, so we have a motion on the floor for approving of the consent agenda. We'll take a roll call vote. Aye, Chair Simpson. Vice Chair Kai?
Aye.
Commissioner Widola?
Aye.
Commissioner Bance?
Aye.
Commissioner Harsh?
Aye.
All right, so moved. Council liaison announcements. Councilor Scott?
Good evening. I will be somewhat brief. City Council will be holding our regular business meeting next Tuesday, May 4th. Work session ahead of meeting has some good topics for those of you who may be interested. So I think that starts at 6 p.m.-ish. We'll have one session around the Washington County local implementation plan update. So that's really on how they're proceeding with building supportive housing services for the homeless based on the Metro measure that passed a while back. So we'll be getting an update on their progress there. Secondly, we had a work session scheduled for March where the chief was going to talk to us about, kind of the K-9 program, protective gear that officers have available to them, as well as kind of how we handle mental health calls. in the police department. So that update got postponed. So that has been rescheduled for next Tuesday. So that should be an interesting topic for people to listen in on as well. And then we have 2 public hearings that will be that we will hold. That's what I'm trying to say. So the first one will be an ordinance adopting the Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Master Plan, which I believe you all forwarded on to us at your last public meeting. So we'll be taking that up and voting on that. And then finally, we will have our second reading around an annexation of land, about 2 acres in the Brookman area. So some additional residential development. As you know, you guys have approved, I think, 3 different developments so far in that area. This is actually an annexation, so I assume that will be soon followed by planning commission hearings on the planned development there. But the annexation is happening under the Senate bill rules from several years ago, so it's generally a formality, but we do have to vote on that that adoption of that acceptance of the expansion of the city limits. And that's what we have on the agenda for next week.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the update. I'd like also for the record, Commissioner Brown is in attendance now, so we'll count her vote in the next time through.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we are on agenda item 4 for staff announcements. Erica?
Thank you, Chair Simpson. So we have a lot going on over the next couple of months. So just be prepared. I've been calendaring all of the dates out for work sessions and public hearings, and I'm going to send that out later this week. Once I have the final tentative draft of some hold dates for everyone to look at, just because I know that summer vacations are coming up and everyone's going to want to leave town. So hopefully if you do leave town, you can read the packet information and provide us your very important comments back to the commission. But my first little update here has to do with the comprehensive plan. So we wrapped up the final block of the comp plan last week with City Council, and we have just entered the production phase. We are expecting the month of May to go through the first draft of the comp plan draft. So we are looking at starting some work sessions in early June with the Planning Commission. And so what we have scheduled out 3 work sessions with the Planning Commission and then 2 tentative joint work sessions with the City Council to kind of get through this plan document to make sure that, we've dotted our T's, crossed our I's with all these goals and policies to get through the hearings process later this summer. Next up is our residential design standards and implementation of some new housing choices here in Sherwood. The online virtual survey, the online open house is up and running since last week, and it is running online to May 7th, and people can find it if you go to our website and you search open house for residential design standards. It'll pop up. It's also in our planning news, and we've sent it out to Facebook, Twitter, our utility billing folks, all of our boards and commissions. And just to let you know that we've already been receiving feedback from community members, which is great. We expect to get our first draft to the Planning Commission on these new code standards by mid-May. So be looking out for that as well. Our next Planning Commission meeting is on May 11th, and we do have a public hearing scheduled. We have the final site development plan review for Denali Summit. And of course, again, I think we're probably going to have a longer update process or a longer update on our residential housing standards that evening as well, getting some initial feedback from the community from the online open house.
That it?
That is it.
All right, and so the Denali site plan that we're going to hearing on May 11th, that is after the city council had done its 2 hearing approval of the PUD, and their hearing created changes to what we had sent up to them. And so that's where we had sent out links to the commission previously to take an opportunity to watch, as time allows, the hearing. I think a lot of the changes were done in the second half of the second hearing. Is that correct, Erica?
That is correct. And so we'll update the Planning Commission on those changes, during our staff presentation on the 11th, to make sure all those changes have been captured in their final site development plan application, as well as their final plat application.
Okay. All right. Now we're on to community comments. And community comments are limited to those items not already on the agenda. And pursuant to House Bill 4212, citizen comments and testimony must be submitted in writing to the city recorder or the planning department prior to our meeting. And to be included in the record for this meeting, the email must clearly state that it is intended for citizen comment for the hearing, and it must be received at least 24 hours in advance. Erica, did we receive any citizen community comments?
We received a public comment in regards to the URA hearing.
Okay, so no community comments.
So no community comments.
All right. Then we're going to move on to the new business, which is our public hearing script, so that I can properly introduce this. So the public hearing on the Urban Renewal Plan 2021 is called to order. To maintain compliance with public meeting laws and pursuant to House Bill 4212, this meeting is being conducted electronically. The public notices for this meeting stated that citizen comments and testimony for this public hearing had to be submitted in writing at least 24 hours in advance to be included in the record. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present their staff report. There'll be questions, if any, by the Planning Commission for staff. There'll be written testimony received per House Bill 4212. We will then close the public hearing and no other comments will be heard from the public. There'll be final comments by staff, questions of staff, if any, by the Planning Commission, and then discussion and vote by the Planning Commission. Let's see. The Planning Commission's role in this decision is to make a recommendation to the City Council, and the City Council and Washington County Board of Commission are the 2 final hearing authorities on this matter. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond precludes an appeal to the City Council. Failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding the proposed conditions with enough detail to allow the commission to respond precludes an action for damages in circuit court. And because this is a legislative administrative decision, there is no ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest. In reaching a decision on this item, the Planning Commission may be required to consider whether the matter meets relevant approval criteria and any other applicable law. If applicable, those criteria are identified in the staff report, and testimony and evidence must address these criteria or other criteria you believe to apply to this decision. All right. Staff will now present their report.
Great. So just give me a second here to share my screen. And then Evelyn Howard is also joining us this evening. She's been helping, she's been preparing the URA plan and reports and working very hard on this subject. So let me, okay. everybody can see my screen.
Yes. Or I can. At least it's shared.
Yes, I can see
Yes.
it. It took a second, but it's there now.
I can see it.
But Erica, we can't hear you if you're talking.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Technology. Commissioners, so tonight you're going to be reviewing and considering making a recommendation to City Council on the 2021 Sherwood Urban Renewal Plan. Let me hold on one second here. So just a little background this evening. The city has been considering adopting a new urban renewal area plan to really facilitate new growth and investment in the community, growing our jobs and improving the land value. Earlier this year, late last year, City Council directed staff to prepare an urban renewal plan and report. And a urban renewal advisory committee was formed to review and provide input on this plan document over the past couple of months. And really, this urban renewal area and plan supports the City Council's economic development goal, which is their top priority. So again, the role of the Planning Commission this evening is to review the plan to make sure that it is in conformance to the Sherwood Comprehensive Plan. And then you'll make a recommendation to the City Council. So what is urban renewal? I know that we had a little 101 session about this at our last work session, but I'm going to have Elaine go through these next couple of slides.
Thank you, Erica. So urban renewal is a local government tool used to improve and revitalize areas within a city. It is used to implement economic development strategies and comprehensive plan goals. Urban renewal allows local governments to focus investments on a particular area to encourage public and private development. Why do cities decide to use urban renewal? They decide to use it because there are opportunities for improvements and redevelopment in their cities, but they do not have a funding source to make those improvements happen. The city general fund typically lacks the amount of funding necessary to contribute to these opportunities. Urban renewal provides a funding source to bridge the gap between the funds available to the city and the projects that they want to do. This is the proposed urban renewal plan area. It consists of approximately 584.6 total acres, 452.9 of that in land and tax lots, and 131.7 in public rights of way. This boundary, if there are people seeing it for the first time, can be very confusing. The tax lots are shown in the pale yellow. The red is right of way, where the broadband, the city broadband, is hoped to be expanded as one of the projects in the urban renewal plan. So although it crisscrosses throughout the city, the only tax lots that are actually included are those shown in the pale yellow. Urban renewal is a financing tool that brings money to the urban renewal agency to spend in the area. When an urban renewal area is established, the county assessor establishes what's called a frozen base of assessed value. That does not mean that the property taxes are frozen on any property. What it means is, at the time the urban renewal area is established, all of the taxing jurisdictions will continue receiving their tax allocation from the assessed value at the time the urban renewal area is established. Over the time frame of urban renewal, assessed values increase, and then the taxes on those assessed values also increase, and that is called increment. So increment is the amount of money that comes in on assessed value that is above that frozen base as established in the urban renewal area. Again, this concept is only pertaining to those tax lots that are in the urban renewal area. It doesn't pertain to any tax lots within the city that are not in the urban renewal area. Property tax payers are not directly impacted, and they continue paying their property tax payments whether or not urban renewal exists. So their payments don't change. They just are partitioned out in a different way. Next slide. An urban renewal area functions on an income source. That income source is the property tax collections based on the growth within the boundary. It has expenses, so those are projects, programs, and administration. And it has a spending limit. That spending limit is the limitation for urban renewal in your community. It is capped by maximum indebtedness. Maximum indebtedness is the total amount of money that may be spent over the life of the urban renewal district on projects, programs, and administration. In this area, the maximum indebtedness will not exceed $166 million, and that is over a 30-year time frame. Urban renewal works, you may go ahead, by leveraging the city tax rate. As you can see in this portrayal, the city of Sherwood tax rate is 26% of the entire permanent rate tax rate on your property tax bills. Urban renewal works by capturing that entire tax rate from the growth within the area to go to the urban renewal agency. One note to make sure we all understand is that the school district and the Northwest Regional ESD are not directly impacted by urban renewal. Urban renewal is an indirect impact on those two taxing districts as they are funded on a per pupil basis through the state school fund. That per pupil funding amount does not directly relate to urban renewal. Next slide. So urban renewal division of taxes does not increase property taxes. It uses the increases in property taxes that were already happening. If you live in the city of Sherwood, you see a line item now on your property tax bill. And if this urban renewal area proposed one gets adopted, you will continue to see a line item on your bill. That does not mean your taxes go up. It just means a portion of your taxes are allocated to urban renewal. To figure out that portion, the assessor goes through a three-step process that we have named the calculation, which is the first step to figure out what the amount of taxes are on that growth in the area, and distributes the tax, that amount to every property tax bill within the city. And again, it doesn't cause an increase in those tax bills. It's just a division of taxes. And then collects those property tax revenues and transmits them to the urban renewal agency. The impact of urban renewal is on other taxing districts. Urban renewal is not a new money source. It diverts funds that would otherwise go to other property taxing districts. They will continue receiving taxes on that frozen base, which is the value of the properties at the time they are put into an urban renewal area. They will forego taxes on any growth in that area for the time period that urban renewal goes. And in many cases in urban renewal, that growth may not have occurred but for urban renewal. In the case in Sherwood, the Tonkin employment area is an area that is a prime industrial area, but does not have the infrastructure to allow it to be developed. The ability to fund that infrastructure to provide for development opportunities will make growth happen there that may not have or probably would not have occurred without urban renewal. Next slide. Sherwood has Yes, there we are. A number of project categories within the urban renewal plan that cover transportation, water, sewer, storm drainage, communications, and public utilities. The communication is that broadband, developer assistance and incentives, acquisition and disposition. And it needs to be understood that the urban renewal agency may not use eminent domain to take private property for the use of other private developers. It may only use eminent domain for placing utilities or for a public purpose. And then administration. So those are the major urban renewal project categories. There is quite a bit of information on the website for the city about this proposed plan that goes into more detail about those proposed projects. And then we have a couple of slides to go over some of those quickly. Next slide, please. These are half the slides, the following half the projects. The following slide covers the other projects. This just shows the amount of the allocation of projected urban renewal funds to the total percentage cost of those projects. The projects are mostly pedestrian, transportation, water quality, so your basic services. There is a Festival Plaza that also will work as parking. The pedestrian bridge over 99 West, the Sherwood Broadband installation, Cedar Creek Trail, undercrossing, tannery site cleanup, TEA transportation, water, sewer, stormwater, Langer Farms Parkway extension, public works facility, developer incentives, financing fees, administration, and total expenditures. Yes, back to the page one, we have the Cedar Brook Way. If you go back just one, Cedar Brook Way extension is also one of the projects. Okay, next page, please. And then yes. So on, is this one still mine, Erica? I think so. When we reviewed the conformance with the comprehensive plan, we look at the comprehensive plan and the different categories within the plan, identify the major goals, and make conformance statements about those. The areas that we reviewed were land use, economic development policies and strategies, transportation, natural resources and hazards. Back one, please. Energy, community facilities and services. All of that analysis is in the urban renewal plan on pages 24 through 29. And the urban renewal plan is in general conformance with the city's comprehensive plan. That is my statement and perhaps a staff statement. You as the Planning Commission will review that and decide whether you want to also find it in conformance to the city's comprehensive plan. Next slide, please.
So I think this goes to Erica.
It does. And I'm sorry, I lost everyone there.
We're having quite the fun time going through this.
My whole screen was blocked by the presentation and I couldn't get it to move.
That happened to me too.
Let me, and now I can't see my presentation. So is it still up?
It's up, but it's not a full, there you go, it's up now.
Okay. Sorry about that.
The other way. There you go.
So a little bit about our public engagement and hearing notice opportunities. So we did have an urban renewal advisory committee that was formed to help to review the plan and provide input into the plan over the past couple of months. We have an online virtual house that's opened, that's hosted on the city's website for people to review the plan and the report. Notice of the hearing was posted on the city's website and was also published in the Sherwood Archer that went out to every property owner this month of April. We have received one comment into the record. as well, and we'll get to that here in just a minute. Oops, sorry. But moving on, our suggested motion tonight for the Planning Commission is in your packet. And I've also provided this slide here if we need to go back to it. But overall, staff is recommending Planning Commission to recommend the URA plan and report to City Council for adoption. And with that, I think Elaine and I and Julia can answer any questions that you may have.
So right now, before we go further, our next step in the administrative hearing is to see if any of the planning commissioners have questions for staff. And if you could raise your hand if you do. All right, Commissioner Kai.
Thank you, Jane. This is kind of more of a technical question on the urban renewal right of way regarding the broadband application. And I'm just wondering, so the right of way that's highlighted in red is assuming that how broadband is currently used in homes. My understanding is that it's brought through with the wired or fiber network. Is that something that needs to go to every home, or is this something that would just go in the highlighted right of ways and then would somehow reach homes from these points?
So I think I'll try to answer that, and I am certainly not the broadband expert, but my understanding is that broadband will have more infrastructure than is necessarily shown within this URA right-of-way. That we tried to get as sort of threading the needle, with getting as much right-of-way as we could within the URA to help supplement things if we needed to, but there's other areas even outside the city of Sherwood that will also have broadband. So they will have the ability to, if necessary, go outside of those red lines if they need to. It just won't be able to utilize URA funds. It will use other funds. Does that make sense? And then as far as the lines, I believe, and I'm not 100% certain, but I think what happens is they will install the lines, and then as each home chooses to connect, that will happen on a site-by-site basis, but it won't be funded by URA. It would probably be funded by that homeowner that's connecting to the broadband.
Gotcha. Okay.
If I may, Vice Chair Kai, they basically stub it into a community or neighborhood or development, and then the individual development may or may not have already been wired for fiber, and then it can be quite so. I'm over in Miller's Landing, and when this place was built, the whole place was wired for fiber, but it wasn't set up to Sherwood Broadband, right? Because it didn't exist. But since the fiber is already in the ground, they can then connect into that already existing infrastructure and change the back end, right? So that you have to stub it into the subdivisions, and from there, that last mile is up to the Sherwood Broadband individual homeowner, typically.
Okay. Just kind of trying to get an understanding of just the scope and just the amount of work that is this something that needs to go to every individual lot and parcel, or is this something that would just be more along major lines, kind of in the map that's shown? So
it would have to get all the way into effectively the subdivision, and then from there it's sort of the purview of the subdivision, right? So
yeah.
The catch is we can't, because it's wired, historically you either had it over the phone or you had it over cable, and those were utilities that were installed at the time of the build, and some of them had fiber put in if they're new enough, but just to expand the footprint and make Sherwood Broadband more viable, they're going to have to increase their network capability, if you will, to your subdivisions all across the space for that, right? That's the reality. So this is generally, ditch witch, running cable underground kind of work.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for that.
Commissioner Harsh, did you have another comment question for staff? Okay, Commissioner Bance.
I did. I unhunked it, but go ahead. He can ask his.
Oh, I'm sorry. Your hand went away, and I thought, oh, okay.
Well, I have a pile of questions, so I'll just stagger them, and Commissioner Harsh we can take turns.
Mr. Vance?
All right. So my first is around the creation of this report. So I understand, it sounds like it originated with kind of a desire from the city council to research this, put something together, get a feasibility study, and here we are. So am I correct in that understanding? And then as far as this actual document, this analysis, who wrote all this? And there's a lot of very detailed financial information and projections, like 30 years of projections. Good luck, in here. Who built all this and came up with it? Yes.
So
Elaine.
yeah, Elaine is raising her hand. So we consulted with Elaine Howard and Tiberius Solutions. Nick, I can never say his last name. Popenick, who are literally the experts in Oregon. They're pretty much the only ones that do urban renewal, so they really know what they're doing. And they, together with input from the city in terms of what's in our plans and what development is on the near-term horizon. I mean, there was a little bit of stuff from staff on kind of when we thought things were going to come online, but then they took it through their meat grinder and developed the plan. Elaine, do you want to add anything to that, or?
No, part of the statutory requirements are that, number one, you have to establish a maximum indebtedness.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you can establish a maximum indebtedness is by projecting a growth amount in the area over time. And we all know projecting growth over 30 years is fraught with havoc. But we use projections based on what we've seen in average growth rates and set up that maximum indebtedness. And then all those tables flow from the boundary area. And from the boundary area, we know all of the properties and can project those growth rates to each of those properties. And from those projections from the growth rate, we then put how much money will come in each year. And so we build the debt service plan and we build the project plan, and then we do the taxing district's impacts. So we have about a 20-page spreadsheet that feeds from one to the other that provides the information.
Can I ask mine?
Yes.
All right. Okay, thanks, sir. So I'm trying to understand. So you're freezing the tax basis, and then the increased perception of the tax basis is going to fund this. But where does the initial capital come from? Is this sold as a bond to third-party investors? Did I miss that in the? I'm sorry. What was that, Daryl? Yeah.
That's a good question.
There is no initial capital until the plan is adopted. Taxes are paid after the plan's adopted, and that growth in the area from the time it was adopted to the time that the taxes are paid. So growth happens by 3% annual growth for all of us, right, unless we're in a recession. So that 3% growth will happen the first year, and maybe more if there's any other new development. And the taxes off of that growth in the urban renewal area goes to the agency. The agency then usually accumulates that growth over some time period, and then will place a bond based upon the amount of money that they have that is able to debt service a bond.
I'll add that we are very strategic with the timing of this. We wanted to get this done sooner rather than later because, as you know, we've got several developments. Well, the Trammell Crow site that is currently under development that is going to be coming online. It's not yet on the tax rolls, and so the base will be frozen essentially as a vacant piece of property, and we'll see that increment fairly quickly. And there's other. Go ahead.
Sorry. So, I mean, to cut to the chase, so we've got a giant empty money bag that we're hoping to fill to do all of these millions and millions of dollars in projects on. I mean, how are you prioritizing your list of projects then with said money? Because like Sherwood Broadband may be important to me. I'm a tech nerd, but it may not be important as compared to the roads to somebody else. How is this orchestrated? Because it feels like, you know, I write contracts all the time that are, you know, going to be $70 million and turn into $8, right? I mean, so, you know, if I'm obtaining 10% of what I think the business line is going to be, how do I fund $70 million worth of projects when I only made 8?
Yeah.
So I guess I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. The URA board, which in Sherwood is the city council. It's a separate legal entity, but it's the city council. Will make those priority decisions on kind of how funds are spent and on which projects. And how do I say this? This plan is, as Elaine said, it is projections. We project how much revenue we think we're going to have, and we've got a list of projects, and we've projected how much we think those are going to cost. We're limited by the projects, and we're limited by the maximum indebtedness. But if the projects come in higher than our maximum indebtedness is, we can't do everything in our plan. And vice versa, if the projects come in lower, but we only have so many projects on the list, we can't add more projects and we'd have to go through an amendment to the plan. So we're limited to the projects on the list and the maximum indebtedness. And then on an annual basis, we see how much revenue do we have, what are our projects, what can we do, and make those decisions as a URA board. Sorry, Elaine, did I say something wrong?
No, that was all right. I wanted to add some clarification. In the report accompanying the plan in table 12, it lists the different projects. It's on, you know, and in your packet, I'm not sure what page it would be, but in the report is page 26. It lists the different projects, and at this point in time, what the priority funding, where it is. So you can look at that, and we acknowledge that over 30 years, priorities will change. It just happens. These are the projects the city wants to do, but it may end up that they get a grant to do something, but they have to have some local match to it. So they'll decide to move that project up in priority because they've got that local match. But right now, the initial projects are the Festival Plaza / parking, the 99 pedestrian bridge,
yes,
the Sherwood Broadband installation, and then the Oregon Street Regional Water Quality Facility.
And the earliest that this is, and I guess I just saw by looking at your chart and refreshing it, so the earliest that this is realistically going to have a dollar to put forward would be in 23, right? 2023.
Correct.
So that said, which is not really within your purview or you need to be chiming in on, but just so you know that there is an interest in the council of perhaps the city borrowing money and loaning it to the URA to jumpstart some of those projects. So there's a lot of like financing things, but the URA will not have money until 2023.
Thank you. That was all I had. Back over to you, Commissioner Vance.
So that's okay. No, those are right up. Yeah. So that was going to be a big question, my initial funding, because it seems like a lot of this happens earlier on when the funds are not coming in yet off taxes. So how's that going to happen? So our approval here is not necessarily approving going and getting loans from somewhere that necessarily that happens elsewhere. This is just kind of the general plan. And I did notice that there's like, I forgot what page it is, borrowing 101, packet page 101 has a whole breakdown of your assumed loan terms and all that, and just and it looks like there's staggering of 4 different loans over time. So that's just this is the potential plan to get us there, and that'll be kind of decided along the way.
Yes.
But what this is doing right now is saying, okay, well, this is the desired plan for 30 years. And
Yes.
then it happens as it can, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is, unfortunately or not, that is how urban renewal works in the state of Oregon. So, and I work with cities all over the state, and usually at about 10 years, we'll go in and relook at the plan and give it an update, because in that time frame, some priorities may change, and so some projects get moved up, or maybe they got extra money for something else, so you go in and rearrange things a little bit on the project list and the timing.
Yeah, or borrowing gets more expensive. I mean, your interest rates are going up. They're up, every projection takes them up, right? You've got them at 3% for your first loan. You know, for 25-year loan. Okay.
Well, you can get those now. I mean, I think that's part of what the city's interested in, is you can, for municipalities, you can get really great interest rates. We typically use the 5% because it's kind of an average over the years. But right now, or at least when this model was built, you could go out and get a 3% municipal bond.
For municipal bonds, okay. Yeah. Yeah, and so I had other questions. So on your debt service schedule on page 102, I think you kind of answered my question about the risk of, you know, kind of the, as this goes. Because you have one in fiscal year 26 where your debt service coverage ratio drops all the way down to 1.1. That's pretty skinny. Other years where the cash flow is doing really well. So right. I guess my question's on either side of that, where what happens if it drops below 1-to-1? Where does the funding come from to service? And then for the other years where it's knocking out of the park, where does the excess cash go? Does it pay down the initial debt, or how does that normally work?
That's a good question. When we talked to the Sherwood finance director, I believe that we established the limit under which he didn't want to go for the debt service coverage ratio. So most of this is above the, 1.1. I think 1.1 is the lowest.
Yep.
And it may be at that point in time, if you're trying to issue a new bond, the market may have gotten tighter, and they may want a higher debt service coverage ratio, and therefore you may only be able to borrow something a little less. So then you just make those changes as the market changes, and make sure that you carry that minimum amount that is in your bond documents. If you have more money, it depends on whatever the minimum is in your bond covenants. Of course, you have to keep that. That excess money you can either put aside so that you have more money to pay future debt service on a new bond issuance, or you can do what's called pay-as-you-go project. So maybe there's a smaller project that you have money that you don't have to put into a bond. You can accumulate that money and pay for that project out of that excess in the debt service coverage ratio.
Okay. Does our decision here lock in the plan for 30 years, basically, and then the details of it are stop and go, or stop different things along the way? Okay, so what we decide here is gonna lock in the future of the tax payments out to these other entities, essentially. Yeah. Okay, I'm curious.
That said, I guess there is a chance that it could. Again, the maximum indebtedness is the cap and the projects. If we, and again, I might be saying this wrong, Elaine, so correct me if I'm saying it wrong. But if we realize all of the revenue and the debt earlier, then it will close earlier. Or so
yes.
The other part is there's an option for major amendments if at some point, and I'm just going to use one. Let's say the overcrossing for Highway 99, ODOT doesn't approve it, and that project has to be changed or modified and those funds get to a different project, a different place, then it would go through this exact same hearings process through a major amendment to add a project or delete a project. But right now we're locked in on projects and money, but it's not unchangeable if something changes. We had done like the Old Town, we've already done one urban renewal district in the city of Sherwood, and that's how Old Town streets were done, and there were other projects, and through the process there were major amendments as buildings come and go, and projects got prioritized. So it's locked in, but not indefinitely if there's a significant need.
And Elaine, did your office work with that project as well?
The first one, we did not write that original plan, but I wrote the substantial amendment that happened in 2008 or 9.
Okay.
And then have worked with the city since then. Yeah.
You've been around for a while working on these.
Yeah.
So since this causes, and this is on somewhere, one of my pages here, I've got it in a page. Hang on, I think it's 94. Nope, not 94. I have it in a page somewhere. Oh, page 110. That's what it is, page 110. Yes, page 110. So on packet page 110, this gives the breakdown of what I assume are taxes, basically future taxes projected to not go to these entities. So I realize that this is not outright going to affect itself taxes for any taxpayer in our city, at least not directly. But what I worry about is some of these entities going, you know what, all of a sudden our projections are all out of whack. We need to have a new bond measure. I'm going to go get that going and put that out there and have everybody raise their property taxes more to pay for something because the city of Sherwood did this, and now I'm losing out on $300,000 a year if I'm TVF&R. Have we seen that before? And what kind of buy-in do you have from some of these agencies right now? Are they expecting to lose this revenue, or what?
So remember, they're not losing the revenue; they are foregoing the revenue increases.
For now.
So that's important.
The projected, yes.
Right. Yeah.
And
projections.
So a couple things. That's a good point from Julia. And much of this revenue is projected as the growth, which wouldn't happen if you weren't able to put the infrastructure in. So it's not just the 3%, it's the growth in the Tonkin employment area that won't happen unless that infrastructure gets put in. So although these numbers look really high, the taxing districts who work with urban renewal understand that differentiation. On our task force, we did have a representative of TVF&R and the school district and the county, who are the biggest taxing districts impacted. And they all understand urban renewal and understand that it is one of the few economic development tools cities have. And it's one of the few ways to increase the economy and jobs. I understand that this is the funding mechanism we have. So if we have to go through what's called a formal consult and confer process with all those taxing jurisdictions, where every one of these received a letter to tell them and ask them if they wanted to submit formal written comments to do that. And the city has not received any negative comments back from any of the taxing districts.
Okay.
So, and on that note, and in addition, so TVF&R specifically, but the other taxing districts as well, part of the reason why we have the advisory committee and we went through the project list, our proposed project list and our revenues, is they all have a vested interest in making sure that the projects are going to ultimately result in increased taxes at some point in the future. And so they did provide input to us. So they do have those interests that they were able to share through the process. TVF&R, we did go and meet with them and presented with them, they indicated support for the URA, the concept. They like the projects. They did not support our public works facility, which is in the plan, because it didn't align with their board policies on URA. They've got specific policies on URAs and what projects they will support and which they won't. And they, because it was a public building, they did not support. That was not a unanimous decision, but it was that was their decision. But the city, the county, and the school district are still expected to support that, which allows that to remain in the plan.
So before we go on, that goes to my question on page 56, which is on 16 of the report itself, about concurrence. There are two very blank lines in there.
Oh.
And that talks about concurrence, that 3 of the 4 impacted agencies need to approve because we have a public project within the plan. And so I don't see that we've detailed the concurring taxing.
Yeah, so and you guys, this is still a draft. The city is scheduled to do it on May 18th, and I am fairly certain that we will concur. The county has already concurred, and then the school district asked for additional time just because of their board meetings and some stuff that they had on their agenda. And I think that's May 12th is when it's going to them, and we believe that they will concur. And if they don't, then we would amend the plan and remove the public works project from the project list. But what you guys are recommending is the confirming that it complies with the comprehensive plan policies. And in general, you are asked but not required to recommend approval of the plan itself.
And the actual documentation of that process on the public building is in the ordinance adopting the plan. So I guess at the point we wrote the report, we didn't have those confirmations yet or scheduled yet. So the ordinance is the very last thing that happens. And so the recitation of the approvals comes in that ordinance adopting the plan.
So to Commissioner Bant's concern, we have 3 of the 4 largest impacted taxing recipients that are going to be in concurrence. The 4th is not. And then we will be in compliance with state regulations on that.
Yes.
Okay.
We hope. We can't say for sure until they vote. And
Right.
again, what we have stated is that if they don't get that concurrence, by state law, we have to take it out, and we will. We'll remove that project.
And so the only thing that's considered a public project is the public works building, not the broadband, the water, sewer, none of that.
No.
It's a public building, I think is what.
Yes.
Because they're
Okay,
all public projects.
Public building. Sorry. Yeah, that's why. Okay, never mind. All right. Commissioner Bantz, I see you still have some more questions. Do you want to go forward? Sorry.
We can go to Vice Chair Kai. That's fine. He can have a turn.
Okay.
Maybe we'll ask your question.
Vice Chair Kai.
Thanks, Commissioner Bantz. My comment or question actually relates to what we were talking about with the public works building. And Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't including the public works building, because both the properties that the public works facility currently sits on and where it's proposed to move to, both are in the URA, and wouldn't the moving of the facility free up the more desirable property that the existing facility is on? So wouldn't that generate more revenue over the time because it's bringing a more valuable property into a better, higher use?
That's certainly the argument we made.
Oh, okay. And
Yeah.
but it's not it wasn't agreed
Yeah, I
on
mean,
from
they have a
CDF&R.
and part of it, remember, they've got a lot of other cities that are looking at doing urban renewal, and they I think they have to be very careful to hold a really tight line on public buildings. So they have I mean, they just were pretty strong. And like I said, there was quite a bit of discussion. It was over an hour of discussion and debate among them. And they did, they're all like, this is a great project. We totally think it's a wonderful thing. We just don't know that the URA funds should be paying for it. It's not in line with our policies on how to spend the URA funds.
So at least if there's, I would say if there's any commissioners who have concern about that agency, not being unanimous in its approval, understanding that having both properties within the URA and what that does for the existing facility property that has better potential in terms of a potential liability and from a tax perspective, it seems that it should be pretty shored up from going from making better use of the better location or the existing location. So,
Yes.
Okay. And I just want to recheck in that we're doing questions, and we'll do deliberation after we get the written testimony and the rest of closing the public hearing. So.
Sorry for that, Gene.
No, you were providing clarity, and I did the same thing. I went back to my hearing script and wanted to make sure that I was still on task. So, Commissioner Vance has a question.
Just a couple more. I'll combine two of them into one. Pages 94, 95 of the packet pages 94. This would be plan pages 14 and 15. This is where I think a lot of the projection assumptions or estimates come from. I was just wondering about your methodology a bit. How did you get to all these cost estimates? What did you use to derive that? And then on page 95, you talk about forecast assumptions for revenue or values and all that. And I think you make a comment at one point that you're assuming like 8 projects will occur. How did you get to all these as part of your analysis?
So I can answer some of it, and Elaine can answer some of it, but really Nick, who's not here, could probably answer a lot of it. As far as the project costs, for the most part, all of the projects that we identified were already in existing plans. And so we used the costs from those plans. And then Nick, then we kind of identified a general prioritization of like near term, medium term, long term. And then Nick applied an inflation factor to that. So that, I think, addresses your questions on page 94. On page 95, maybe Elaine, you can touch on kind of what the methodology was for estimating the...
What page is that in the actual report?
It's page 15.
Okay.
Second paragraph, the short-term projections include assumptions on specific new development. This exception value is based on 8 new construction projects.
Oh.
And it goes on, discusses. I'm just wondering why 8? Why not 9 or, how is that relative to the total,
Well, if that's, I'm sorry, I didn't read that. I think that is actually projects that are actually happening, like talking with planning staff. So we know that there's the Trammell Crow, and we know, so it's, I can't remember what the other ones were, but they're things that are like very, very likely to happen in the near term.
Okay. And so those baked into your assumptions about value, which is how you get to the tax revenue over time. So these are projects you feel actually fairly confident will occur and thus result in that income to service these needs. Okay. Right.
But it should be known that when you go, I don't know what you do if you do banking and financial stuff, but when you, as an urban renewal agency, go to the bond market, we never ask them to place a bond on hoped for development. Mm-hmm. It is based on the real revenue that is actually coming in. Right. So These helped form the projections, and they were based on either projects that were under construction or projects where permits had been pulled or permits being reviewed. But again, until that actually comes on the tax roll and the money's coming in, the agency won't be able to use that projection or statement actually securing finance.
Yep, which probably explains why you're staggering some of these loans over time. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for that. And then my last about the plan, Section 8, now you kind of covered this. You said eminent domain is not going to be used for private to private. Do you anticipate anything private to public?
We do not anticipate none of these projects. We don't anticipate any of that. I guess it's possible that if there's a road project, there could be some, but that's certainly the absolute last, the last goal, I guess. But it sounds like we can't use, is that what you said, Elaine? We can't use eminent domain anyways.
Private to private. And right, okay. Private to private. And the reason I clarify that is that the words urban renewal bring historical context of taking property from people and then packaging that and selling it to a new developer. And that kind of activity is no longer allowed in Oregon and will certainly not be allowed in this plan.
And I just want more so for anybody if they're watching than the commission themselves, but even with our advisory committee early on, there was a little bit of confusion just because a property is in the URA does not mean that we have plans to do anything with that property. It's in the URA for those revenue purposes, the increment purposes. So just to kind of clarify that not every property that's in the URA is envisioned for a project. It's just to kind of help make the whole thing happen.
Got it. Okay. That's it for my hard questions. I am curious about the public review period. It sounds like it's kind of been around for maybe 2 months. Is that maybe I heard that wrong? Is that normal for something like this, for such a long outlook and decision that we give public notice? And this period of time, is this all regular, that we've allowed sufficient time for people to kind of analyze this, provide feedback, and all that stuff? This is my first URA.
Yeah, Julia can chime in just in terms of Sherwood itself.
Mm-hmm.
Over the last year and a quarter, things have been a little different just because we can't get out and do an open public meeting or that kind of input. So most of our input has been virtual input for all the work that I'm doing right now. That is just where we are. The reality is all of those projects in the plan are projects that have been identified through other master plans or visioning by the city council or city council goals. So in terms of identifying projects, all of that has had past public input and public review. This is just a financing source to make those things happen, right? So yes, but we've had advisory committee meetings. Those have all done, there have been minutes of those. So this, I think with us, it's been going on more than a year, hasn't it, Julia?
I think so, yeah. It started with the feasibility study.
Yeah. Open and many discussions with city council at city council meetings. So in terms of when the virtual open house was, that was within the last month, but there have been open public meetings on this for over a year.
Okay, for viewers to see all that. Okay. Okay. I did notice a small thing, typo, page 43 of the actual, it's packet page 123, but page 43 of the plan. Very minor, but under the paragraph 124th Avenue, right in the middle, you just got on, period. So So there's that.
If that's the only one you
Yeah.
found, then I
No,
think
I was yeah.
well.
I was curious if you have any. This is my last thing. I was curious if you had any visuals for some of these projects. Like there's one about the roundabout at Oregon Street.
I think in our virtual open house, if you go to the project list, I believe that we have visuals for most of those projects. So if you go to our web page, I believe just on the front page, it says URA open house or URA virtual open house. Erica, I can't remember what it says, but you're nodding. It's one of those two things. So, and then it's got some information about URA 101 type stuff, but then it's got the projects, and then each one of those projects has a visual.
I was trying to figure out how to visualize this new fangled roundabout you're gonna that's in the plan.
Yeah, I don't know that we have a visual.
Disallow the west something.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's more just from a
got it.
From a plan. But Erica,
Okay.
is it URA open house or virtual open house?
It's URA open house, but if you go to the city's homepage, on the left-hand side, you see a banner. And the very first banner on that left side is the URA virtual open house link. So you can just click on it and it'll take you straight to the open house.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you for letting me put you under a hot light. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank you
Commissioner
for all
Vance.
those questions. That's wonderful.
I do have another typo on packet page 72, which is the page 32 of the report, I think. Just at the top, it has the existing zoning is shown in, and then it says error, reference source not found.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't point those out. There was a bunch of random stuff like that in there. I just assumed it was draft. So
no, I will look at what happens on those is sometimes when I send my document out, some of those references will break, but I don't know it because they're good on my end. So I will double check what the city has. And once we put it in a PDF and go through it, then we should find all that. So it might have gotten put in a PDF.
Okay.
I knew that those references broke. So we will, thank you for bringing that up. If one's broken, there are more, and I will find them.
Okay. And then on packet page 46, which is your page 6, I'm just questioning the reference to the ORS. On the previous page, it's all ORS 085, and this says ORS 457 087.
Yeah, that's for the report. That's correct.
The report itself is referencing a different ORS.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because everything else had been 085 up until that point.
Yep.
And then my one question for clarification is on the bottom of page 56, which is the plan page 16. I was just I understand how amendments work, major amendments, because I actually moved to Sherwood about the time that this, the first urban renewal district was going through. And that actually failed. And then a second one was brought forth. But anyway, the sentence says, this will include the sites listed below and other sites in the area which may be identified in the future without requiring an amendment to the plan. What does that mean? I mean, how many others? Well, first off, there is no sites listed. Well, there's the Tannery site and the former Public Works site. I guess I'm confused. Developer insistence and incentives. Can you just bring me clarity on when other sites can be added and why it wouldn't have to go through an amendment process?
I think the idea was that, and Bruce is here too, as well as obviously Lane. I think the idea was that we wanted to have some funds to offer as developer incentives. So if somebody wanted to develop the public works site, but we needed to do something financially or infrastructure wise to support that, we wanted to be able to do that. And there may be other projects that come up that we want to say, hey, if you're in the URA and you would develop but for this this SDC or this whatever, that we wanted to be able to have that as a tool in our toolbox.
So an example, so we're doing the stub of Langer Farms Parkway up on the other side of Highway 99. Are you saying that because that's in the urban renewal district, if someone wanted to redevelop a site that's up there, one of those parcels could be added to the project list? Well, it could be added to the project list. How would you add a site for redevelopment without adding to the project list? And
So this is Elaine, yeah.
yes.
So many urban renewal areas have this particular provision within them, and that is just a general category to provide developer assistance. So in Sandy, it's for storefront improvements, and so they've done maybe 50 of them. And each time they approve one of those, they don't have to amend their plan. They just have developed a storefront assistance program. So if at some point you decide to do assistance to anything other than these two sites, and open it up more widely, the agency would probably want to develop some program guidelines for how that program might work, and then approve a project. But those projects, if it falls under developer assistance and incentives, don't necessarily have to be added to the plan. They would just need to be in compliance with any kind of program guidelines that you had set up for providing those developer incentives.
That would be run by the Urban Renewal Board. And
Yeah.
so, I see on table 3, there's developer incentives, constant fiscal year 2020 is $400,000.
Yeah,
and then year of expenditure project cost is $1,074,000. So besides the 2 projects that are listed, if similar to how we did the Main Street project in Old Town, where people could come in for facade grants, there would be a program developed and someone could
apply for that. Yeah.
Apply for that. Okay. It seemed really open-ended, and I wanted to make sure that we weren't just, and this random thing
Right.
could just come in and a future city council could do something without having to do a major amendment and go through the public project. Because it's 30 years, who knows what's going to be happening with the next council 29 years from now.
Right.
So.
Right.
Okay, those are my questions of staff before we take any written or public testimony. Does anybody else have any questions of staff on the plan? Okay, so item 3 is written testimony received per HB 4212. Citizen comments and testimony for public hearings must be submitted in writing 24 hours in advance of the hearing. And as our policy at the Planning Commission, staff will read the first 4 minutes of the testimony that was submitted. And if you give me just a minute, Erica, I'm going to try and find the timer on my phone so that I can make sure that unless someone else already has that done, but.
I was already tagged to do that, but.
Oh, well. Glory be, go ahead then. I'm just trying to get my phone to work. So you can do the timer then.
All right. So I'll start.
And wait, before you start, I want to make sure that we are submitting this into our record as Exhibit A. And then I'd like I want to confirm that all the commissioners have received their copy of this. If anybody has not received a copy of the written testimony via the email, if you would raise your hand, we can make sure you get one emailed to you right away. And I do not see any hands raised, so all commissioners have received the written testimony. We'll submit it into the record as Exhibit A. Thank you, Erica. Now you can go for it.
I'll go ahead. I'll start. To Sherwood Planning Commission from Clause 22211 Southwest Pacific Highway, Sherwood, Oregon 97140, regarding comments to Planning Commission about urban renewal in advance of the Planning Commission meeting on April 27th, 2021. Date April 26, 2021. At this point, given the short notice and incomplete documentation of what is occurring with the urban renewal, we are all beginning to understand why the Nick versus Township of Scott, Pennsylvania case had come down, vitiating many of the earlier steps that Williamson Regional Planning versus Hamilton Bank initiated. The state and its use of police powers covered by sovereign immunity can fabricate their case and then go to the sympathetic state courts, as in Oregon with the elected judges, and further skew the wheels of justice against the citizen who may have had their free speech restricted, real estate property confiscated without due process of law, and without any due process of law and fair treatment covered under the First, Fifth, and 14th Amendments. It is impossible to complete a page-by-page analysis of what this urban planning new Save the Day urban renewal code is supposed to be doing because we have not seen it. To put it as Julia Hadouk said, we, the city of Sherwood, have not decided to roll out the plan yet they can schedule the public hearing to push it through. The irony to this is now appears that at least one member of the Planning Commission who has stated in a non-protected environment that an unnamed individual does not like Chinese people was on the planning cabal of Mayor Mays. Once the secret truly leaks out, it will not support the bold conclusions of Mays, his consultants, his staff, and his new group of lawyers. What this action appears to be is a Hail Mary to save the lack of proper sanitary sewer that is legal and conforming to Sherwood's codes for Patrick Allen's new $250 million high school project by seizing sewer that we paid considerable amounts of money to obtain, as well as a way to overcome the stupidity of combining two arterial streets, 99 West and Elbert Road at Sunset Boulevard, in front of the school that endangers the safety of the student body and motoring public. That stupidity of site selection and location, as with Mr. Allen's ill-fated sign code, has natural, probable consequences that negatively impacts our kids' safety and land use planning fundamentals in our town. But clearly, the bombastic Allen has used all these moves, including a silly sign code, site selection of the school, where Mays was given property below value for big success in his bureaucratic career in Salem. But again, this agency is not supposed to be an objection to urban planning. This is an administrative decision that has not been aired publicly in a proper way. It is to try to set off the fact that it is based on false statements and a great deal of subterfuge to pass it. Shame on the people in charge of the process who do not trust the community and kids they are supposed to be serving. I listened to the statements of Mr. Mays falsely utter in front of Washington County Board of Commissioners, not only about the old URA and proposed urban renewal plan. He also took a shot in the Robin Hood Theater, a remarkable historical building, the last of its kind in Oregon, built to withstand the most rigorous earth movements. His statements are typical of the lies told to try to pass this new ill-fated urban renewal scheme that is not contiguous blighted property, but spot designated property with only the broadband and public utilities in the street tying or chaining together the new urban renewal district parcels. We gifted the Robin Hood Theater and adjoining parking lot to the community. The city ran the theater for several years before then deciding they wanted to do something else. They built a $20 million art center in the Old Town area with the urban renewal money. They promised a huge art complex in the year 2000-2001. Instead, they changed their mind after the URA was passed and waited 20 years to build the art complex, a much more of a scaled-down version because there was only $4 million left in the URA after all the other projects they snuck in, like gerrymandering the URA boundary to
That's
include
4 minutes, Erica.
Thank you.
You're on mute, ma'am.
Simpson, you're on mute.
Oh, and the only smart thing I said tonight, sorry. So that was Exhibit A, and as it is submitted into the record, and we received no other written comments during this hearing. We are going to then close the public hearing, and no other comments will be for this hearing's body. Just again, a reminder for the public that's listening to this, the city council hearing is a de novo hearing, and public testimony can be submitted to the city council. Again, with the regulations in place during COVID, They have to be submitted at least 24 hours in advance to be given to the hearings body.
And for the record, those hearings dates are May 18th and June 1st.
So the May 18th one is the one that will be the first hearing, and
Yes.
it's up to the council whether they keep the record open, correct? Or do they always keep the record open?
Their charter requires a first and second reading, and that is what, and I believe that the process requires that as well. So we've assumed that there will be a June 1st meeting.
Right, but will they take written testimony at the June 1st or
Oh,
only?
yes. Yeah, the first and second reading, you have a public hearing at both of those. Yes.
Okay, so there'll be opportunities for the public to provide additional written testimony that relates to the plan itself. And what we've been tasked with, just for clarification before we have final comments, and then you can clarify anything that I misspeak about, is that as the Planning Commission, we've been asked to look at our existing comprehensive plan and see that the analysis done by the consultant agrees with our understanding of the comprehensive plan, and that this plan itself, the Urban Renewal District Plan, is in agreement with our comprehensive plan. And that's our task for this evening, correct?
Yes.
All right.
And then can I also add, I'm sorry, and this is sort of out of the blue, but you may be wondering, and others may be wondering, because we are in the middle of doing a comprehensive plan update, Erica did look at the plan in relation to the plan that you're going through, and there's nothing conflicting in either. So don't feel like if you make a recommendation on compliance with this plan, you're somehow undermining the work that you've been doing on your comprehensive plan process.
Understood. Okay. All right. I understand. And then there's final comments by staff. Erica or Elaine, do you have any final comments? And they're shaking their heads. And then we have any further questions of staff by the Planning Commission. Commissioner Harsh?
My question in reading that public testimony, I don't have any context to the gentleman's concerns. Is there anybody here that could share any context? Is it appropriate to ask for that? I mean, it's a very winding 7-page letter that I didn't get his sanguine points that he was trying to make out of it, other than he seemed generally pissed off. So
I guess my first comment is that we're tasked with taking, it's kind of like a regular public hearing where we have to take what our task is, which is to confirm that's in compliance with the comprehensive plan. And if evidence is brought forth that says we're not in compliance with the comprehensive plan, then we can take an action. And I did, like you, I read the document and I didn't see where he raised a point that mentioned that, you know, if there's opinion about
it didn't meet the standard of pointing out a gap between the current comprehensive plan and the URA.
Correct. Is it? And that's my understanding. That's how I was reading what our task was for this evening and how the letter was written.
Okay, so I guess further consideration of the letter isn't relevant to our task at hand.
I would ask.
I guess I'll chime in. I would be hesitant to, with a letter like that, to give you my interpretation of what the context was. I think that is a slippery slope that I'm not willing to go down. So.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
but if it doesn't align with the subject matter of the meeting tonight, if it doesn't actually raise a valid point, then we don't have to really discuss that. That's what I was trying to understand as part of this, is I couldn't see the main points of it as it related to what we were talking about, and I frankly couldn't see the main points of the letter. So
yeah, and I did ask Elaine after getting the letter, because I don't think that there was anything that was raised procedurally that was a concern. I asked her to review that and confirm that, and she did not identify anything that was a concern to what you're being asked to do tonight.
Okay, thank you. That's like I said, I was just trying to understand it. It was very long.
Yeah.
Just real quick along those lines, who, just for the sake of viewers, who is responsible for actually formally deciding to do this plan? I mean, we're just looking at, compare it to the comprehensive plan to say, yes, it jives, pass along. Who is the body that will actually decide the merits of the plan and approve it?
City council.
City council, yeah.
Okay.
And then
Thanks.
it's also approved by Washington County because some of the parcels are within Washington County. So there are actually two elected official bodies that have to review and approve the merits of the plan, the project list, and the funding mechanism. And then, as we discussed previously, the affected tax revenue recipients also have to, at least 3 of them have to agree, or the plan has to be modified. So,
Thank you.
Commissioner Harsh, your hand is raised. Do you have another question?
My apologies.
No, that's okay. I've been on mute and raised my hand when I shouldn't have. So it's all. So I guess my one comment on the plan is we've already done one urban renewal district. I was going to ask, is that one done? When did it start? And has it been closed or completed?
I can't tell you when it started. Elaine probably can because she knows so much. It is not closed. It's actually scheduled to close in 2023, I believe. The council, I think it was the council, not the URA board. Maybe it was the URA board, significantly reduced the size of the existing URA late last year to basically free up acreage to consider forming a new URA. So it's much smaller than it was before, which, by the way, will result in more properties being on the tax roll because they'll be pulled out of that URA. So it's smaller and only a few years left of the current URA.
And what happens if the URA, so I thought I recalled if the URA, if it's successful, then everybody wins as the project closes and the tax increment financing works. But there's also benefits for the properties that are around it, because even if they're not in the URA, other benefits, other people's property taxes are going up, other things are redeveloping, and then there's other benefits to the community. So in looking at compliance with the comprehensive plan, we are doing what the comprehensive plan is suggesting as it's in the plan, which is finding economic opportunities and building our community in a equitable, fair, and one of the big things for transportation is finding alternative funding sources. And so it's to me, it's a struggle because we're taking money from one citizen pocket and putting in another citizen pocket, because it doesn't matter. I get that the schools don't get impacted because the students still have to pay it, but someone still has to go out for bonds. Someone still has to do that one. So I struggle with it, especially the first time I heard it, but I think I felt more comfortable as I see that our community then is in control of their own destiny when it comes to planning projects and ensuring that areas that, like the tannery and the Tonquin employment area, can be developed with those alternative funding mechanisms. So those are my comments on that. Are there any other questions of staff or discussion by the Planning Commission? I know that Erica has draft language for our vote, or if, and look at her, she's so prepared for us.
Well, do we do internal discussion first?
Yes, we can. I had asked if anybody had any questions or any further discussion or comments.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I don't. I just was wondering, other than apparently Councilor Scott, I don't think Chair Simpson thinks you're going to be on the council in 30 years, but
no, I can safely say I will not be on the city council until 30 years from now.
It's okay because I can guarantee that he'll be on the Sherwood planning cabal and that time. So
I see. Okay. All right. No, I have no further comments. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other hands raised. Vice Chair Kai, you're not muted. Are you ready to make a motion?
I am. And Erica, it would be best to use the motion that's on the screen. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I move the Sherwood Planning Commission finds, based upon the information provided in the staff report and the provided attachments, that the Sherwood 2021 Urban Renewal Plan conforms with the City of Sherwood Comprehensive Plan, and further recommends that the Sherwood City Council adopt the proposed Sherwood 2021 Urban Renewal Plan.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council, or that we recommend to the City Council that the Urban Renewal Plan conforms with the Sherwood Comprehensive Plan. Any further discussion? All right, then we will take a roll call vote. Vice Chair Kai?
Aye.
Commissioner Widola?
Aye.
Commissioner Bance?
Aye.
Commissioner Harsh?
Aye.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson? Aye. I always feel weird asking myself. I don't know how I'm supposed to do that well. Okay, then the motion carries. We have recommended approval on that. Thank you very much, commissioners. Very good questions, and I think I learned a lot more about urban renewal districts. So next, our planning commissioner announcements. Oh, bye, Elaine. Thank you very much.
Bye, thank you.
Yeah, see you again on May 18th. All right.
Thank you.
All right, there she goes. All right, planning commissioner announcements. Commissioner Widola.
Thank you very much. And it's more of maybe a question for staff. I read in the paper, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, that Tualatin City Council was reconsidering, or some members of the City Council were reconsidering the extension of the Salt Creek Parkway. And so that was back up in the air. I don't know where that settled, but my question would be is if that extension doesn't go through to what was it, Southwest Boones Ferry, I believe, how will that impact our employment area that we're building in the Tonkin area? And could that have a negative impact downline on what we're trying to accomplish there?
So I don't know exactly where it stands at the moment, but I don't think it will significantly impact our Tonkin employment area now, because and maybe Bruce, I think if he's still here, nope, he looks like he might have left as well. I don't think that we are marketing it as being done and in place. We're really focusing on access to 124th and Tualatin Sherwood Road and 99. So I mean, certainly if and when it does get done, it will be more of an incentive, but I don't think it's a detriment to our current planning.
Are we lobbying their city council, or is our mayor talking, going over there? Are we doing anything to help push that? Or
that's a great. I don't know. I don't believe so, but I think you raise a very valid point that we probably want to put our 2 cents in there a little bit.
I'd volunteer if you need someone to go. So, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Don't have any other announcements. Our next meeting again is May 11th, correct?
Correct.
And we have a hearing.
May I
Yes.
ask a question of staff? Is there any timeline or discussion about bringing these meetings back into in-person? Is that starting to come onto the horizon?
No, not exactly. I mean, there's
Eric is
sort of
nodding. You're saying
yeah,
no.
there's general discussion, but with us having the county going back into the high risk, I don't think it's going to happen super soon. Once we get out of this and we're more in the lower risk categories, and we can do that. I think that we want to do it as soon as everybody else can. Councillor Scott, I don't know if you have anything to add as far as council conversations about council meetings in person, but I don't think that we're quite there yet as a county and a city yet. Did you have anything to add, Councillor Scott?
I know he's not here, but I know that he's expressed in our other meetings, especially as we were talking comprehensive plan and residential design standards, of somehow figuring out how, and it came up, I think Erica's nodding her head, when we were doing residential design standards, really trying to figure out how to do either in person or it came up with the residential design standards specifically one-on-one, where opening up our Zoom meetings to the public and figuring out how to do that effectively. And I was trying to figure out how we could set up little, husband and I drove past something the other day where the person who was outside taking orders was in like a green plexiglass box thing. And I'm thinking, we could just get one for Erica and Joy and put them out front with our open house easels.
We could get one for each of you guys, and at each place on the dais, you're in your little box, and then we can have a public hearing inside.
How about I just give you my vaccine card? I'm happy to produce it.
I second that.
Commissioner Vance.
You have your hand up.
Yeah, I know. I'm just going to move on from that topic. I would like to be in person though as soon as we can. That'd be great. Yes. I wanted to thank staff or whoever it is that's writing the Archer in the planning corner, because I did notice the last version of the Archer, it really got out there and talked about, I should say, the House Bill 2001, kind of pushing our design stuff and all that. It was very well written, good. I think it was very pointed, and it points out why we're doing this and what the impact is. I thought it was excellent. So thank you for doing that. It was great.
No kudos for my article.
Yeah, it was good too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't see any other hands raised. If there's no other announcements, we can go ahead and adjourn our meeting. All right. We are going to be adjourned.